Welcome, Nitty Gritty. We have the one and only current Lieutenant Governor Cox with us.
Well, it's true. There's
Future
only one
governor.
lieutenant governor in the state.
And as of
Future governor.
As of 2 days ago, our future governor. Congratulations
Don't
on the
jinx it.
victory.
Thank you very much. Cam always says I'm his favorite lieutenant governor, but he says that to all the lieutenant governors, I think.
I've
so.
never spoken to a lieutenant governor ever. I've never had a sign in my yard until your sign. I've never been invested in an election like I have on this one.
Well, thank you, Cam.
I'm a fan.
No, look, I'm a bigger fan, mostly because I like to eat, but also you're a great guy. I was a fan of the establishment before I knew you, but I think you made the difference. It was a close race, and that sign in your yard was 7,000 votes. Easy.
Listen, if you want some slightly overweight middle-aged men in Utah, I'm your guy.
Hey, that's my
And our
demographic.
podcast is
And our podcast-
not overweight women.
No.
Just nice,
Just women.
powerful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Utah
well-
women.
Yeah.
So the question is, why are we doing this after the primary
Yeah,
election?
so-
like, where were you guys
That-
like a
that's
month
a funny
ago?
story.
I needed you.
So your campaign manager, Austin, when I text him, it was literally the day before Election Day. And that was the first thing he said is like, oh, I'm sure he'd love to do it, but we should have done this like a week ago. I'm like, I'm an idiot. And I mean, I had been telling these guys, Andrew and Brent, for a while, like, I'm going to reach out to Austin and Spencer. Like, we'll get them on here. And I just,
No,
I procrastinate everything, but
it worked out great.
you didn't need
This
me.
is awesome.
We'll save it. We'll save it.
Now
for
we
November.
get the first victory lap,
See, and it worked out good that way.
right?
I mean, Austin texted me that today. Like, this is kind of cool. This will be the first time you sat down with somebody since winning the primary.
Yeah,
So
yeah, this is it. This
we're
is the first one. So
we're stoked that we're on your way home.
thank you.
today.
It worked out well for me too.
For those that don't know, you live in Fairview,
I do.
right?
Yeah.
Which is another hour south
right
of here.
I'm about halfway home. So I mean, not quite halfway.
See, I wouldn't move if I lived in Fairview, though, either.
Well, that's the thing. You've
I
been
would-
people.
it's worth the drive.
People say I'm crazy,
No.
and until they come and then they see where I live,
Oh.
and then they're like, oh, I get it now.
Go
That makes
snowmobiling
sense.
up there one time, and it's over.
That's
I
it.
still think you're crazy.
Thanks, Andrew.
That's so far to drive.
But have you been snowmobiling up there?
Nope.
It's beautiful.
Okay, well, we need to take you.
I've never been on a snowmobile.
Oh wow.
I don't know if you want to start that. It's too much work.
That,
It's fun until you get stuck, which is like 8 minutes between.
I mean,
That's why I've never gone, because my friends that go, the only thing they talk about is how much time they spent digging out.
It's nonstop.
And I was like, no.
well, you need to go
pass.
with me then. I need to take you. The problem is they buy sleds that are a little too powerful, and
Right.
they're not sure what they should be doing with
Yeah.
them. So, but no, my uncle's a Polaris dealer in Fairview, and we live.
That's a busy shop.
We're in Fairview. You know, I live right in the mouth of Fairview Canyon, so it's 10 minutes to the top, to the best snowmobiling in the world, and it's
Wow.
it's pretty great.
Very, very cool.
So, but I am crazy.
Well, the number one law I want changed
There we go.
affects you. Affects you
Here we
since you
go.
commute so much.
Yeah.
I think it's very important.
Uh-oh.
We need to make driving
is it?
slow in the left lane a law.
Oh, I'm all over that. We
It's
should-
ridiculous.
and like not just a law, but like maybe punishable by
Like jail
death.
time.
I don't know.
It is so bad because of cell phones. Anyway,
It is
two
it is
cents.
bad, and in some states that is a law. And
yeah,
you
and
can
a
pull
bunch
people
of
over
them it
for
is now.
driving too slow in the left lane.
So yeah, I say it jokingly, but it's kind of serious too.
I don't know if this will cost me the election, but
No, I think
I'm with
people
you.
will agree with me.
Okay, good.
Educated people will agree
Good.
with me.
Yeah, I'm all in.
Anybody that drives every day has to know in Utah. We have a problem driving the speed limit, first of all, meaning on the underside of the speed limit.
Well,
We
it's
drive
be-
slow here.
Well, it's because you can't let someone pass you, because that means they're better than you.
And that is true here.
I know it is.
No one lets you merge. It is a weird place. Like, I won't use my blinker because I have to trick the person behind me because they'll speed up if I turn my blinker on. Only in Utah.
They're like, nope, you can't get in front of me.
Oh, man, we're going to start a rant. I shouldn't have brought it up.
I'm not going to denigrate Utah drivers. It's not good for my election hopes. But there is. We always hear like, oh, we have the worst drivers in the country. But
That's not true.
the data actually shows that is not true.
Right.
That we actually have some of the best drivers in the country. But if you want to see slow drivers, come down to Fairview.
Oh.
Between Fairview and Mount Pleasant, I don't know what it is.
It's aging population.
It's
It
that
has to be.
single lane road.
Well, that's part of it, but everyone, the speed limit's 65,
Right.
and we drive 50 just to be safe. We just got to make sure
It's
we're
either
going.
an old person or someone on a cell phone.
Yeah, or a tractor.
So when I went,
Or a tractor has a good excuse.
I
right?
passed many people on that road.
Oh, really?
Not
Scary.
great. Not
All
great.
right. Well, I got that.
I'm glad we got it out.
System.
Okay.
We got going.
I wanted that named after me if it ever happens. I need to get a study done. Isn't that how you get a law changed? You got to get somebody to come and do a study first.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start putting funding together for that after
The
you're in
Bam Bam's
office.
left hand lane.
Yeah, something like that. Bam Bam left hand, no man's land, or something like that.
Okay. We're
Stay
moving on.
out.
We're moving on.
All right, I guess we can talk about important things.
So, Spence, you are third generation of
You
Fairview?
just called the lieutenant
Spencer?
governor Spence.
You
by
can
the
call
way.
me
I didn't say
Spencer.
Spence, did I?
You can call me Spence
Did
too.
I really say Spence?
No, hey, look, I've been called far worse. Just today
I
on
did that.
Facebook. It's that's it.
I apologize.
You can call me Spence. It's fine.
That's awesome.
So I'm sixth generation.
Sixth.
Fairview. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We're there from the beginning. My great grandfather was one of the originals, and we're still on the farm.
What kind
right
of
there.
farming do you do?
So it was a dairy farm. My dad sold the cows when I was a kid, and it's about 150 acres, and it's mostly alfalfa right
Okay.
now. We do some grains, but almost all alfalfa that we sell to local horse people and cattle people. So
Most of the siblings stay around and farm as well?
we most of the siblings are still there. There are 8 of us. A couple of them live on the Wasatch Front, but the rest of us are around. And now it's our kids that are cursing our names, like we cursed. Like I cursed my dad. So yeah, my kids were up moving pipe early this morning, and we still have some hand lines. We have about half hand lines, half wheel lines. No pivots. Because pivots are for wimps. But it's actually we just can't afford them. But yeah, so it's good for the kids. It is. My 13-year-old daughter was really angry this morning when she got up, and that's okay. It's good.
Are they planning on staying there and farming as well?
My kids?
Yeah.
No, none of us are planning on it. I mean, I wasn't planning on it. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I mean, my wife's from Mount Pleasant. She grew up on a 500-acre ranch there, and we went to high school together. We swore we would leave and never come back. And, we had 3 boys and a girl on the way, and decided we needed to go back. So it's funny how your priorities change, as you get a little older and what matters to you. Like I hated that farm and small towns and then it's just, I wanted my kids to have those same experiences.
And see, they'll change the same way.
Maybe
because like
No, they won't.
Well, no, because our in-laws, right? Father-in-law's a farmer, no kids,
That's true.
right? Everyone's
Pansies.
gone.
Egg farmer.
Bankers.
Yeah.
Everyone
They're
left.
bankers now.
Smart.
No hair.
That's it.
Right?
Be careful.
No, listen.
That's just.
I don't have any either.
I know. It's a great look.
But it's funny how you just mentioned the 3 like most horrible things I ever did for work. You just mentioned 2 of them. Okay, the worst one was baling, or not baling. That's number 2. Docking sheep.
Oh, well, we do that too. So my mom and my uncles, they're sheep people. I mean,
Right.
so they've got my uncle's running about 2,000 head of sheep right now. And so I would go dock lambs all the time, and my wife's family too.
It's always hot. And I'm the
Always
big
hot.
guy, so I always had to hold.
Oh yeah.
Get under their hind legs, hold their front legs down, feel the veins get ripped out, then the tar. It was the worst. Number 2 was hauling hay.
Yeah.
Right out of the field, allergy central.
So I have terrible hay fever.
Right. Same here.
People don't understand our pain.
It's hives
Yep.
and
And the
There's
heat
nothing you can
and
take for it.
not for that.
I mean, it
No.
just, no.
Not when you're
You're
right
like
in the
fresh
middle of
cut
it.
stuff, it's been cut for a few days, right?
Yeah.
Usually. And it gets down, you wear long sleeves, long pants, but it still gets down your shirt and you're sweaty and ugh. Anyways, number 3, irrigation.
Yeah.
So we
Hand
had
lines?
only 10 acres in Heber. No, we did. It was flood
Flood
for me.
Yeah.
So it was standing down in the,
Taking your water turn
Right, yep.
in the ditch.
writing down in the ditch, standing on my little plastic, dam, waiting for it to fill up so it wouldn't,
Yeah.
run out. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, right? So when I was 12, 13 years old, moved to Heber, and 2 months later, I'm flood irrigating at 4 a.m. with snow melt. I hated my family. Oh man.
Of course you did.
But now I want
look,
it back.
That's the thing. And it taught you important lessons that
Absolutely.
have served you well throughout your life. So
Absolutely right. And it's such a cool experience to have. And now I would love to have a property to irrigate. But yeah, I'd still put sprinklers on it somehow. I wouldn't stand in the ditch anymore. Anyway.
So you guys left. Where'd you guys go?
So we went to Snow College. So we really got far away.
Yeah, you really ventured far.
We did. Hey, it's it's another school district away, and then we went to Utah State. So we're
Okay.
my wife and I are both Aggies, and
It's a safe school to.
Can I tell a quick story about that?
Of course.
Well, so first of all, I grew up major BYU fan. Like that was
Really?
it. Oh yeah. I was the go to games, paint. My whole. We were all painted in blue and white and obnoxious.
Interesting.
And that was my whole life. And I got back from my mission and proposed to my wife and said, "This will be great." And she said yes. And I'm like, "Great, we'll go to BYU." And she said, "I'll marry you, but I'll be in Logan." And I went home and I'm like, told my dad, I'm like, "I think I'm an Aggie now." And so, but by the way, it was awesome. I love Utah State. Best thing that ever happened to me. And but here's the story about that. So we were at a Utah State game. I think it was last year. It was I can't remember who they were playing. It was homecoming. But Donovan Mitchell came up, and
right.
Royce O'Neal and George Yang were there, and we were on the sidelines with them. And it was really cool. They got him custom jerseys and everything, and they were hanging out with people and the media person for Utah State came up and said, "Hey, can we just get a video of you guys saying 'Go Aggies'?" And Donovan's like, "Nah, I don't want to offend people, other teams in the state. We're fans of all the teams."
Right.
And I just said, "Donovan, listen, you're fine. Like, you can't go to BYU and say 'Go Cougars' or and say 'Go Utes.' People will hate you.
Right.
But if you say 'Go Aggies,' everybody's like, that's fine. Yeah. It's fine. It's not a problem. You're fine."
It's a perfect story.
for that. And so they did it, and they did. So your point is right. So yeah, we're fine. Nobody ever gets.
I remember that video.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say you two once we get you guys to talk about the Jazz.
Well,
It's coming.
right?
We could talk that, but so went to Utah State and then went to law school back in Virginia. Had a chance to stay back on the East Coast, but decided to come home. Went to work for a big law firm in Salt Lake and lived in Fruit Heights, Kaysville.
What
right
made
on
you
the
want to
border.
get into law?
I just knew. The truth is, my parents, when I was 8 years old, took me back to Washington D.C. And my uncle lived back there. And I just kind of became enamored with history, and specifically with Thomas Jefferson. We went down to Monticello and his home, and it really had an impact on me. It's weird, but he was an attorney. I read everything I could about
How old
Thomas
were you?
Jefferson. I was eight.
That's awesome.
Like,
Holy
yeah.
crap.
So
As an 8-year-old.
I'm kind of
I have a feeling
Messed
he's
up.
really smart,
no,
Obviously.
right?
Yeah.
Like at 8, he was probably our 12 or 13.
It's like my 25.
I mean, it's true. He probably knew more about history.
He probably knows more about Jefferson than I do now. I'm 8 years old.
No, it was. I was just a weird kid. I was really interested in kind of current events and stuff. When my parents got a subscription to the newspaper, the Daily Herald. Local shout out, the only newspaper we could get in Fairview back then. When I was 12, I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and watch the news and read the newspaper every day.
What?
Yeah, I know. I shouldn't admit this stuff.
That's
but
awesome.
No, it's
What are you
not.
talking
it's not.
about?
It's not awesome. But
It's not. Maybe it's not cool when you're a kid, but
Yeah.
it's such a cool story now,
I
right?
guess, yeah.
I mean, you're about to be the governor of the state.
My parents still make fun of me, so there's that.
They're just trying to keep you humble.
Just
That's
wait
it.
until he goes to jail or something.
Yeah.
Then they'll make fun of
That's
you.
it.
Like, hey, son,
I'll
governor.
be over. Anyway, so went to law school in Virginia, then came back and worked there, and then decided we wanted to go back and raise our kids back on the farm. So
You can't get much different. East Coast law school
yeah.
to Fairview.
Yeah.
That's quite the swing.
Have you read the book Hillbilly Elegy at all? You should read the book Hillbilly Elegy.
Is that real?
I've never heard of it.
Just trust me on this one.
I'm totally looking it up.
Okay, So, well, let me tell you why you should read this. So, first of all, it will help you understand why Donald Trump got elected in the first place. So, in fact, he released the book before the election, and it did okay. And then the election happened, 2016, and it became a bestseller after that. They actually called him the Trump Whisperer because it's about a kid who grew up in Appalachia country, Kentucky, in that area. He came from a pretty messed up family. He didn't know his dad. His mom was on drugs. He was raised by his grandparents, and he goes to law school at Yale. And it's a interesting
From the holler to Yale.
Yeah, from the hall. It's a fascinating discussion, but he talks about what was happening in these cities that were like the Rust Belt, coal country, and the way people felt. And then Trump won, and all these elites were trying to figure out how this happened, and they read this book, and it suddenly made sense to a lot of people. But the reason I just bring that up is, East Coast versus Fairview, it is very different. And one of the things I loved about going back home is that nobody cared about that. They didn't care that I was lieutenant governor. They didn't care that I went to law school. None of that mattered to them. I was still that kid, and that's what I wanted for my kids. I wanted them to grow up, not thinking any of those things, and trying to shelter them a little bit from this life that can be chaotic and not healthy sometimes for people, and it keeps me grounded. So that's why I stayed there after becoming lieutenant governor. It's why I drive 200 miles round trip every day, and it's been a crazy 6.5 years.
Well, and just hearing that story, I mean, I think it shaped you into exactly what I think the voters want. It's just kind of that blend of, like, the big city, the urban stuff, but ultimately you're a real breath of fresh air in politics. I think that's what stood out to me. Well, the first thing that stood out was you immediately responded to me on Twitter one day. I was like, what? Whoa, honey, the lieutenant governor just tweeted me back. And
I said the same thing.
Isn't social media awesome?
It's awesome.
I said the same thing. I'm like, Abby, Cam. No, I'm serious. I'm like, look, Cam just tweeted me back.
Oh my gosh!
No, I'm not making that up.
Utah County's meat magician.
You can call and ask her.
Are you serious?
I'm
See,
dead
I'd love
serious.
to get Abby on here. I think that'd be really fun. But
Abby's a lot more fun than I am. I'll just tell you that right now. She's spicier.
I think that just watching the debate, what was that? 4 weeks ago, I guess now.
Oh, which one? Yeah.
The last one. The last one.
Yeah,
before
the last
the
one was 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks. Yeah.
And it really, I think the thing that stood out to me, and I wonder how many people feel the same. There was everyone was taking jabs at the current city and lieutenant governor, right? Because you're in the arena, right? Yeah. Well, that's easy pickings, right?
I was getting this,
and it was so annoying to me. It's like, Andrew and I had a discussion about this, and Brent, just kind of like, it's two great candidates, right? Huntsman, great track record.
Yep.
I would be bummed that you lost, but I think that would be because I know you a little bit, and I am a real fan. Really believe in what you do, but I still think we'd be in good hands, right?
Agreed.
But ultimately, I think people notice that you just expressed your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, your plans, and you never mentioned anything negative about anything else.
That's been your calling card, right?
And that is such an extinct thing now, I think, in politics.
So,
and that has to come from your small town background, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Part of it is, that's really why we ran. People ask all the time, why do you run? And I can say all the things. I want to make the state a better place. I believe that our plans are better than anybody else's. And I do. I believe all of those things. But they also had great plans. And I learned some stuff. And I'm going to steal some stuff from them. I mean, that's right. The way it works. Sure. That's, it's a competition of ideas, or at least it should be. But from the time I was 8 years old and looking at this stuff, I've just been so saddened by what's happened in our country as we've become more polarized, and it's become this competition to tear people down instead of a competition of ideas. And Abby and I mean, we had this discussion all the time. It was, the governor had asked us, told us you should run. We want you to run. We think you'd be great. and we really didn't want to. We didn't need this. We far out kicked our coverage. Being lieutenant governor, this was never a plan, never in the cards, never even wanted that. I was happy. I was really excited to serve in the legislature. That was a big deal, and getting elected there was a big deal. But that was it for me. And so the reason we decided to run was because we wanted to prove that you could do it differently. And we wanted to run on we wanted to make campaigning an issue, which is weird. Usually there's issues that become a part of the campaign, but we wanted to make the way we campaign an issue. And our hope was the political industrial complex is so corrupt. It's all these people who make a lot of money convincing people who can't win to run often. They have their polling, and what they do is they copy whatever won the last time. That's what they do. So somebody runs a negative campaign and wins, and it's like, oh, that's how you win now. You have to run negative campaigns. And so we wanted to prove that it could be done differently. First of all, because that's who we are, and it's true to us. And all of that being said, I can't tell you how hard it was in those debates not to.
I can't even imagine.
I would have totally dropped. Well, you left right in the middle of your term. You left right in the middle of your term. What about that?
You said it, not me. So I'm a litigator. I went to law school. I practiced law. I litigated, and as a litigator, you have to be very quick on your feet. You have to be able to come up with arguments right on the spot, and debating, it's something I'm really good at, and being able to. I had so many just cutting comebacks that would have, just they would have killed on Twitter. They would have gone viral, and people would have been sending watch this as he burns this person, or he just, we're having a funeral for that guy, because But I just that wouldn't have helped. It just would have made it worse. And so every time I wrote on the top of my on the top of every page, I would take notes, as I was doing, and I had pre-written just the word "dad" on the top of every page. And every time I wanted to do that, I would look at that word and remember, that my kids were watching or what was happening, and then I'd dial it back and stay on message. So that's it. And we almost lost, but I'm glad we won. And my hope is that now we can say, the people of Utah have once again rejected negative campaigning, right, and that other people will remember that and try to copy us next time.
Well, and I think it says a lot that that was, I'm sure when you saw Huntsman was jumping in, it was like, that says a lot. Beating the guy. He's got. His resume.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was a great governor here.
In fact, he sent his resume to all the voters next to my resume. So it was. But
people don't care about that. I don't think people. There's so much to politics that people want to feel connected to, especially at the state level and lower, right? This is like that last safe haven of, at least in Utah.
Yeah. We
want to feel a connection. We want to feel like, our values here are being looked after, and that as long as we're in Utah, we're safe. And I think people really do care about, I'm not going to sit down and bog myself down with reading about a legislative session I'll look at the stuff I'm into, but it just always leads me down a wormhole, and I get grumpy. That's the other thing I want to talk about, is how you keep a smile on your face doing what you do. But it's ultimately people want to feel a connection and a positive something right now.
I think so. I really do. Right? I think people, and that was our philosophy going into it, was that people were hungry for that they missed that right, that it would resonate with people in a way. And let me be very clear. Ambassador, former Governor Huntsman is incredible. I mean, an amazing public servant, what their family has done for the state of Utah, what he's accomplished over his lifetime, the years of service. I can't imagine being an ambassador in places like China and Russia. And he's built for that stuff. Like I couldn't do that. I'm the first to admit it, that he has a skill set that is very unique. And I believe that I have a skill set that is great for this, for bringing people together, for helping to guide Utah, and most importantly, for getting out of the way and empowering the entrepreneurs of the state. That's what's so cool about Utah is we made this mistake that the government is supposed to solve all of our problems. And it was never designed to solve all of our problems. That I don't say that as like a partisan Republican, like government's bad. I say that just from a practical standpoint. Like government, if you wanted to design something to solve our problems, you would not design what we have, which is, 75 members of the House, 29 members of the Senate. They only meet 45 days out of the year. It's, all these rules and regulations in place. It's just not built for that. And so I do believe I bring that to the table, but it's nice that the people of Utah had some great choices. We're really lucky here. And when I look at other states and the caliber of some people that run, it gets a little sketchy. But here we just had overly qualified people. And you mentioned the two, but Greg Hughes and Thomas Wright, really accomplished and successful and thoughtful people who ran. And so we knew it was going to be tough. When Ambassador Huntsman got in, when we were first deciding to run, that was not even on anybody's radar.
I was going to say,
no one saw
you
that
had
coming.
no idea.
No.
So how long ago was that you decided to run?
So we started getting serious about it. I would say it was around January of last year, so a year and a half ago. And then we heard, I remember where I was. I was actually took my son back to Washington, D.C. during his spring break. So that would have been like, I want to say end of March of last year when we heard this rumor that Ambassador Huntsman was considering coming back and running. And I thought, that's crazy. That can't be a thing.
Why do you think he ran? Any clue?
I can't answer. I mean, he said, that he just felt it was time to come back. And I know that his wife really wanted to settle down. I'm sure it was rough on her to having lived in Russia for those years all around. And so wanting to come back. Politics is a weird thing. You kind of have to keep your name out there or you're just done. You're gone if you want that. And that's so people have different motivations for different things. We have a better life outside of politics. And I think that's one of the problems that have happened in our country, this idea that politics has become a career for people. Right. It's why one of the things I loved about George Washington was that concept of going back to the farm, leaving. That's always really resonated with me, that there's a time to be done. And so we, there was a part of us that would have been really excited to lose, to get our lives back and to kind of live a normal life again.
That had to help a little bit during the stressful campaign, just kind of knowing, whatever, winning would be awesome. We can really put into practice what we've learned and what we want to accomplish, but we got the farm.
Abby and I had that conversation almost every night. It was because when those attacks are coming and you feel the stress and the pressure of the whole thing, and a coronavirus on top of that, and the pressures that came with and still are here with all of that, it stopped being fun like a long time ago. And so whenever we would get in that, like, the world's kind of caving in, we would just remember, it's a win-win for us. No matter what happens, we win, and that really carried us through and got us to this point. But winning's always
it's always better, right?
For sure.
So I want to step back just a little bit. So when you were obsessed with history, did that also mean you wanted to get into government? Like I have to know, why would you get into government and politics? Like I can't think of anything that I would rather do less.
Yeah.
like it just it's so not for me. And so I'm really curious, I
don't know, laying concrete for a living.
There's other
roofing.
I've done a little of both of those.
Yeah, they both are.
But I'm really
horrible.
curious, what is it
cheap.
that, because you kind of hit it from the outside looking in, you can see it that a lot of people turn politics into a career.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe another reason to get in.
Yeah.
And so you not planning to be a career politician, not wanting to, Like, why would you put yourself through that voluntarily?
So there's a couple reasons. One, when we moved back to Fairview, one of the things I love about my family is this kind of, we have a history of that you have to give back to your community.
Okay.
It's really important. So I have cousins that are volunteer firefighters and EMTs, and they do that kind of stuff. And I wasn't good at blood or fires, and so but having a legal background and kind of I like to solve problems. That's one of my things. And again, just following. I was a political science major, so I'm not going to say I wasn't interested in politics.
Yeah,
I was very interested in politics, and that combination, I think, drew me to it. My dad was the mayor of our town when I was 8 years old.
Interesting.
And again, a little town though, everybody takes a turn. It's kind of how it works. But he was also a county commissioner after that. So it's, again, it's kind of in our blood a little bit.
Okay.
And so I was always interested, but I never envisioned myself at this level. Like being the mayor of Fairview is very, very different than being a lieutenant governor or running for governor. And when we moved back to Fairview, shortly after moving back, a good friend of mine who was on the city council came and said, "Hey, somebody just moved. We have a vacancy on the city council. We're going to appoint someone, and we've talked about it, and we really want you to apply." And I was flattered. I thought that would be fun. Paid like $100. And there were some big problems in our town at that point, and said, why do you think I'd be good? And he said, we don't. We just, it's your turn. We can't get anybody else to do it.
Whatever.
And
we don't.
The one thing they did say is we have this huge legal problem, and we can't afford an attorney. And we were hoping if we appointed you, you would do free legal work for us. And so that's a true story. I mean, that's how I got involved. And so I was on the city council, and then the mayor decided not to run. It was like 9 months later, and they asked me to run, and I did, and then ran for the county commission. And what I found at every stage was I really enjoyed it. Those were all part-time. I had my real job as running a telecommunications company, and then doing that on the side. And it felt very gratifying to give back in a positive way and to feel like you were making a difference and solving some problems with a skill set, my legal background that not many people had there. And so I enjoyed that. And then we redistricted in 2012, and there was Sanpete County got a seat. We hadn't had a legislative seat, and my fellow commissioners encouraged me to run for it, and I did. And that was, I thought like getting to the House of Representatives was, that was it. Like if I never did another thing in my life, that was just, as a kid from Fairview, that felt like a really, really big deal. And I was only there for 9 months when our lieutenant governor resigned, and out of nowhere, and this is the thing I still don't get, Governor Herbert asked me to be the lieutenant governor. It doesn't make any sense on paper. It doesn't make any sense if you know the governor. Not that he, I mean, it just that somebody he didn't know well at all, that he would pick someone like that. That's just not his style. And so I thought he was having a stroke. We had to get that checked out, but and that was a really hard decision for our family. In fact, I decided to tell him no, and I've told this story before, but we knew we weren't going to leave, so it meant a 200-mile round trip commute every day. It was a huge cut in pay because our company was really doing well. And I was coaching my kids in football and basketball and baseball. And, I just had the perfect life. I didn't want to give that up. And so I decided to tell him no. And it was Abby that changed the whole conversation. I told her, I said, "Hey, I remember my daughter was walking up. She was 6 at the time. She just gotten off the bus with her giant backpack walking up the lane to our farm. And I just kind of lost it. I'm like, I can't miss this. And I said, I'm going to have to tell him no. And she's like, maybe we should think about this. And she said, she was reading a biography on George Washington at the time. And she said, the problem we have today is we have too many politicians that really, really want these jobs. She said, maybe the fact that we don't want them means that we're supposed to do it in a weird way. And so that got us. We spent a little time thinking and went and talked to my parents and ultimately decided to say yes. And anyway, so it's a long story, but that's the rest.
So
is
you're
kind
only
of
9 months
history.
into, state government.
9 months into state government. Yeah, I got elected, started my term in January, did one session, and then this was September when he called me, and October when I.
And do you know why now?
So I had gotten to know Greg Bell, who was his lieutenant governor.
Right.
We had served when I was a county commissioner. We had served on this the Governor's Rural Partnership Board together, and I know that he was the one really pushing me to the governor. His senior staff all submitted lists of people, and the governor went through and crossed people off, and he gave Greg the list back and had crossed me off, and Greg went back to the governor and said, just meet him once, just talk to him, just trust me, just at least have a conversation with him. And then, I don't know the rest of that. I know the governor's very thoughtful. He's very, he cares deeply about these decisions. And I know it took him a long time to make the decision, but I still don't know exactly what happened.
When you first got to the state, was it different than you were expecting?
At the legislative level? Yeah, it was exactly what I was expecting, and like 100 times more of it. There's nothing that can prepare you for the pace, the speed, and just the immensity of it. It's 45 days, and you'll pass about 500 bills in 45 days. That means you'll vote on 700 plus, and they don't meet on weekends, so it's really like 32 days, and just making decisions so quickly and trying to get through that. Reading every bill is one thing. Understanding what's in it is another thing, right? I mean, and that's, again, it's a messy system, and it's why we make mistakes. In fact, most of the bills we pass are just fixing crap that we passed last year because we didn't understand the all of the unintended consequences. But I don't mean that derogatorily. It's awesome that it actually works, and we've gotten this far.
Why is it? I mean, I don't know. Why do they only give you that amount of time? Like, why not take the whole year and work a little bit every month to give you time to read and process and do everything?
Because that would be even worse. So we have this debate every year. There are lots of legislatures that are full-time. And the thing about lawmaking is you'll use all the time that you have.
Parkinson's law,
we
right?
figure that's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I still believe that less government is more. The fewer laws we pass, the better. I still think we pass way too many that are completely unnecessary, and everybody feels like they've got to do something, and so let's figure something out, which is unnecessary. But not only that, one of the things I love about our legislature is that they're all part-time. They have real jobs outside of this, and I think it helps keep them grounded. Right. It also gives them some expertise on some things. So we've got 4 doctors in the House, I think. And whenever there's a medical issue, we can just turn to the 4 doctors that are there.
There's got to be a heart attack once or twice.
That's also true.
Someone's having a stroke in the hallway.
I'm going to be eating more of your barbecue, and so I'm going to get the paddles out and keep it going. But or a school teacher, or someone, a truck driver, and so when there's an issue that impacts that, these people have real life experience, and
they can speak to it better than anybody else can.
And then they have to go back to the real world after they're done and answer to people, and that's
keeps you connected too.
It does, yeah. So there gives some give and take in both, but yeah. I tend to like this system better.
Interesting.
It's such a weird, I look at just the city level. I mean, what do you think about participation nowadays? As far as getting involved with city, I mean, do you think it's lower than it's ever been?
Yeah. So it's been lower than it's ever been, for sure. We can just look at the voter turnout numbers. And in the 60s and 70s, we had the highest voter turnout in the country.
Right.
And by the time I came to office, we were bottom 5, and a lot of apathy, a lot of just disgust with the system. And people not wanting to get involved. And then now that has been changing, I will say, and we pushed really hard to increase voter turnout and get more people involved. By 2018 in the general, I think we were 11th. So we were moving up, which was good. And then this election last week, the biggest primary election maybe we've ever had,
which is crazy.
Voter turnout was insane.
Considering like what would it have been like without Corona?
Insane. Well, I don't know. There's an argument that
The
Corona
mail-in ballot might have helped it.
maybe increased it because
I've never used the mail-in before. I've always gone to my spot.
Yeah.
But it's like...
But everybody got a ballot. Right. And what's interesting, we did have drive-up locations in the 4 major counties, 4 big ones and some others. And very little. We only got about 5,000 drive-through votes on election day.
Really?
Yeah. Which at the time I thought, wow, that's crazy. But the reason is literally everyone had already voted. Let me put this into perspective. So
Good for us, Utah.
In 2016, okay, Governor Herbert and I ran again, and we won in the primary. We got 72% of the vote. And that translated to about 175,000 votes. That's how many votes we got at 72%. So I think total turnout was like 275, whatever that were, 250. I don't remember. Probably 250. That's probably closer. In this election last Tuesday, I got 36% of the vote. And I got 190,000 votes.
Wow.
So I got more votes with half the percentage than, I mean, that's how big the turnout was. So about 250 4 years ago, it'll be over 500,000 or close to 500,000 this year. So that is remarkable.
That's a third of the state,
for a
right?
primary
right around there.
election.
So what are we at? Almost 2 million.
3 million.
We're at 3?
We're 3 million. Yeah.
I knew it was crowded up there. People go away.
But you have to remember,
you ruined Heber.
Most of those are kids. So
okay, that's good.
When you look at the adults, it's a really good turnout.
Okay, fine.
Well, I heard too for this election you had a bunch of
I wanted to touch on
people reclassifying as Republican.
Yes, we did.
So they could
I
vote.
kind of liked it. Is that
great.
weird? I liked that people were thinking that, like, at least actively thinking about, hey, I can get involved. And I mean, at first you're like, those bastards. Oh my gosh, they're going to ruin everything. But as I thought about it, I think I read something that was just like, it's a democracy. This is what's great about our country is like they're taking a vested interest in their state, whether they vote the way you want them to or not.
Which most of them didn't, but
right. But I softened, I guess, when I read that.
No, look, I've always been a big tent Republican. Like I think what we should be doing is trying to convince people from other parties to join our party. That's the way it used to work. Right. Now what we do is we feel like party membership is like, I don't know, religion, or not even religion, because we try to get other people to join our religion. So but it's become kind of an immutable characteristic. Like we have to build a fence around our party and not let anybody out and not let anybody in. And Republicans are Republicans and Democrats are Democrats.
And
We're
if you
different
do
tribes.
One thing that's not Republican, I'll put you on a billboard and tell everyone we hate you.
That happens.
It's insane
to me. And it's a problem. And so I've been about that. It was really interesting that was my opponent's. That was part of his. He knew, and we looked at the data for all of those people, those Democrats and independents that were joining the party. They were supporting him probably 2-1. Right. And so that's the reason it was so close in the end. We had about a 5 to 7 point lead the entire way until Jim DeBacchus and Rocky Anderson and all those guys started registering as Republicans. But we welcome them. We're glad they're part of Trump's party. And
hey, I mean, that's going to bite them somewhere, right? Like
I just had to.
You were flip flopping.
Let Jim DeBacchus know that.
Oh my gosh.
But it's anytime people get involved in the process, it's a good thing,
right?
Really good thing. So,
wow. See, and I would think I'm surprised they took such a. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you're both you and Governor Huntsman are fairly moderate, and I would think that they would welcome either one of you. It's like, if we're going to have a Republican, I guess I don't feel like you're a hardcore, when I listen to Hughes and his super obnoxious commercials, I'm going to say the negative things. You're just holding a straight face right now. I can see that. It's very,
video,
very
you
mature
can
of you. But, he's really pounding the whole like Trump, I saw it first, I'm in the party. And I feel like that's the exact opposite of what we need right now. I feel like the middle is what we need, or somebody that is a little bit, because I'm a Republican for sure, but there's a lot of times where I'm super not proud of, I get lectured all the time, like the Black Lives Matter stuff that we've been doing on the podcast.
Yeah.
I can't believe how many like arguments I've been in with my own like friends and family, just like, man, you're turning into a liberal. I'm like, oh, sorry, I've turned into a human. Like, if that makes me a liberal, I'm just trying to be a better, human being. And it's
I
funny.
love that you're doing that. What's interesting is in every other pursuit, every other thing we do in life, we reward that change for the better, humility, learning. Oh yeah, right. All of those things, except in politics.
Yeah.
And if you change, you're a flip flopper. Now look, to be clear, there are lots of politicians that only change because they want to get elected, not because they're real sincere about it. But I wrote an article, maybe 5.5 years ago about the thing that's missing in politics is humility and the ability to change. And there's a great quote by Judge Learned Hand. It's back in the early 1900s. It was called The Spirit of Liberty. And we often think of the Spirit of Liberty. You picture kind of an eagle carrying a rifle or and a
all
flag waving, all of that stuff, right? And he argued that the Spirit of Liberty. He said the Spirit of Liberty is that spirit that is not too short is right. The spirit of liberty is that spirit that is willing to, and I don't remember the exact quote, but learn from the hearts and minds of others. So being willing to think you might be wrong, that you might be mistaken, and to change your position. And one of the things I'm really worried about our party, is that we've ceded the ground of humanity over to Democrats. And what I believe, I'm a Republican because I care about people, because I believe that our philosophies and our policies actually lift people up and make them better. And this idea of racial injustice that is here, and just trying to ignore that is wrong. And we should be the party. We were the party of Lincoln. We were the party of women's suffrage. We were the party of civil rights. We were that's our heritage. That's our history. We should be the party of helping to get rid of injustice wherever it is found, and making sure that we know that Black lives do matter. I mean, I sat down with a black mom of 5 boys, and talked to her about her experiences. I mean, it's rough.
It's so much more.
And if you don't,
there's so much more racism in Utah than I ever thought.
People don't realize it, and I didn't realize it. And you hear these stories, man, it's just heartbreaking. So, yeah, we should speak up for those people. I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. That's our job.
Absolutely.
Do you feel that, like, I don't know, I feel like where we've gotten to with this, it's like the two-party system is almost hurting us more than it's like helping us. Because I feel like people are having to draw such lines, and it's like I can't say, oh, do you know what? You're right on that.
Yeah.
I feel like there's not that happening. And with like the, younger generation coming up, it's like it is so far radical one side or the other that we're losing the ability to communicate, because it's either I'm right and you're wrong, and that's it. Like,
that's it.
Like there is no, oh, I can understand your point. I don't have to agree with it, but I can understand it and respect it. But no, it's like, nope, I'm right, you're wrong, and that's that.
Andrew, I couldn't agree more. I'm going to give you another book recommendation.
Okay.
You got to read this one.
Okay.
It's called Them, THEM.
Okay.
The subtitle is Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal. It's by Senator Ben Sasse. He's a senator from Nebraska. And he talks about this tribalism that's happening in our country. George Washington, in his farewell address, he warned against partisanship and a two-party system, how damaging it could be. And it's ebbed and flowed over time, but certainly we're more polarized right now, political scientists will tell you, than at any time since the Civil War. And in this book, Senator Sass talks about why that is, and this is some really interesting concepts that we're lonelier than we've ever been before.
Okay.
We know fewer of our neighbors, and we make up for that on social media, which isn't the same. It's not real communication. We don't have any friends, so we hate the same people together online. That's one way that we do it. He talks about political entertainment, or politics as entertainment, so politainment.
That's
he
what I was
refers to
going
it.
to say. It's social media and the news.
And the
Or the opinion shows.
Well, that's it. The 24-hour
All the talking
news
heads.
cycle. Yeah, Fox and MSNBC talks about how dangerous that is, and he talks about the psychology of it. Like when you listen to people screaming, we get addicted to outrage, and they make a lot of money knowing how to push our buttons. And as that. One of my favorite memes says that, Fox News is doing to our parents what they said video games would do to us. It's so true. And I'm not just knocking on Fox News. It's true of MSNBC. It's true of CNN. By the way, I have not watched cable news in 6 years, and I'm very proud of that. It's so bad for us. It's so corrosive, and it's making life worse.
So where's the best place for people to stay connected and not just at the national level, but at the state level? I mean, that seems to be the other problem, is there's
no way to get information.
There's just not an option. We don't really have newspapers anymore where they actually have, you got to write about what happened today. You have this much space. You have to think it out a little bit.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful about what you say, because you can't just get on TV and say like, oh, whoops, got that wrong. Here's my retraction an hour later. Like if you put it in print, it's a bigger deal. So I felt like they were held to a little bit higher standard. And so, where do you go to see unfiltered, besides C-SPAN, of course, right?
Right,
Which
right.
Nobody wants to sit and
Nobody
watch
wants to
all
watch
day long.
C-SPAN. You can go to at Spencer J. Cox, Twitter, Facebook. It's hard. So I will say reading is always better than watching, because it involves fewer of your senses and you can process things a little better. Now that doesn't mean that there's biased reading for sure. So I always encourage multiple sources in there, and know that, and you can look. There are bias rankings for every. So I have some conservative, papers and news sites that I read. I have some liberal news sites that I read, but I always know the slant that they are going in. I think it's important to get a mixture of those things. Sure. And so, the Deseret News and the Salt Lake Tribune are the closest things we have here. But there are biases there.
I was going to say,
there's no
absolutely biased. Don't ever read anything about BYU in the Tribune.
Yeah. Or Spencer Cox.
Yeah. And see, it's so sad. I like that. Did you read that letter? That open letter from a lot of the liberal professors.
Oh, in Harper's. Yeah.
About cancel culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of applauded them for doing that. I don't know that it will change anything, but we can't, there's no dialogue anymore.
Yeah.
It's scary. It is scary. Like we're scared to talk shop with friends and family because maybe let me back up. It's almost like when you actually do talk about it face to face with somebody that has different politics than you. It's like, see, we can do this.
Yeah.
Like it's fine. And in person, we have to respect the other person. So we may like smooth some of the things that we're saying, smooth out some of the rough edges and make sure that we show appropriate respect to their beliefs. But man,
online,
you put a keyboard in front of somebody.
Well, that distance and anonymity or whatever, it's, I should show you my feed right now, just from today. It's,
I made the mistake of reading a few responses to Governor Herbert's, the new mask thing today
for the schools.
And
well, that's the thing.
It lasted 1 minute, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta be done. It's unbelievable.
So because what's amazing about what he did today is it's the rare time when you can make everyone mad.
I think you can never win.
Yeah, but because he didn't do a statewide mandate on masks,
right.
Half the state thinks he's killing everyone, and because he did do a mandate for schools to protect teachers and others, the anti-mask crowd is really upset. By the way, great article yesterday that everyone should read by Dan McKay, a state senator, on this idea of politicizing masks, right? And look, I get it, but everything is politicized, and this one is one that shouldn't be.
You came here.
Yeah, it was. I thought he did a really good job of trying to lay out the case.
I love life and liberty, and wearing a mask protects both. Yeah. That was the headline.
That's the headline. It's great article. But that's my point. Like, those kind of discussions don't happen. But it is weird when you get people face to face. Most of the time, they're much more civil, much more willing to have a discussion and learn.
Well, I mean, I just see stuff that friends and family post sometimes, and it's like, you would never say that.
Never.
You know what I mean? Like, you would never say that. Why?
Everyone should have it connected to a business. Like, that also helps you have to be careful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's right.
It really is sad, though. I mean, like, we're on the subject, but like when Donovan Mitchell posted about the stuff he did about like
Black Lives Matter.
Juneteenth and the Black 19th.
Yeah,
like free-ish, that one?
Yeah. Like,
man.
The comments in there were unbelievable. Like, I can't imagine.
And Spider Mitchell fans.
Like, I can't imagine people actually saying that to another.
They would never
human.
say that to him in real life.
They wouldn't.
And they wouldn't. And I'm, it was so nice to see so many of Jazz Nation come to his defense. And of course, Steve Starks and Gail Miller and the organization who've really leaned into this in a positive way. And by the way, discussions happening right now amongst people who wouldn't have had these discussions in very positive ways. So it's definitely making a difference. But boy, there's some people out there who have really made it tough.
It's sad.
Yeah.
How do you protect your kids from that? Like how do you because I would imagine some of these people, there are no boundaries. So they're mad at you. I would assume they attack your kids.
Well, Russian bots don't care.
Russian bots don't care.
They don't.
And it's kids should be off limits, and they should. They need to be off limits, and it's harder because my kids are older now. I've got one who's down at SUU, one who is actually in between a mission. He's going back next week, and then one that'll be a senior this year, and then my little girl who's in middle school. But one of my sons likes social media a lot. He's pretty active. He spends a lot of time on Twitter. His views don't necessarily line up directly with mine, and that's getting harder too. Like, the younger generation, they don't want much to do with the Republican Party right now.
Yeah.
We're losing an entire generation, which is another topic for another day. But we did have a couple people who kind of used him, screenshot some things, and tried to use it against me, and it just that's where I have no patience. And talk to Abby, the mama bear really comes out when you mess with my kids. But one of the good things about staying in Fairview, though, was we've kept them sheltered from this a little bit, which I think is a good thing. I think was the right thing, and we try to keep them off social media as much as possible.
Yeah. Do they enjoy the fact that you're running or that you're in government?
No, they don't. They're fine with it. They're good. They tolerate it, I think, more than anything. I think we're mostly hoping we lost. In fact, my daughter, we don't have horses right now because our lives are so crazy. My family, her family does, and so we can ride anytime we want. But somehow my daughter figured out that if we lost, she got a horse, and so she was telling all her friends on the bus to tell their parents not to vote for me.
Oh my God!
She was running a real
amazing.
Insurgent campaign, and. But no, they're just kind of like, this is our lives, and they've sacrificed as much as anyone, and I recognize that, and I'm extremely grateful for it. They've handled it really well. It's been hard for my daughter just because she's the one that'll have to move. My third son will be halfway through his senior year. We'll let him finish up, but she'll have to move to a new place, new friends. So the night of the election, even though we didn't win that night, we were up when the initial results came in, and she was with her friends, and everybody was cheering and excited, and it was great. And then there was just this moment where it dawned on her kind of what this meant, and she came up and gave me a hug and just kind of lost it. And that was one of those moments where I kind of lost it,
Sure.
like, did we do the right thing? I think we did the right thing. And we know we did the right thing. But and she'll be great. She's resilient. She's tough. She's a farm girl. But it does take a toll on families. There's a reason people don't do this stuff. And we see it every day. So.
Wow. Well, and you have to remember, I feel like that's one of those things where you got to just, imagine them once they get married.
Yeah.
And they, it'll be something that they're really proud of.
Well,
look back and they're really proud of.
The Herbert kids, we get to look to,
right.
And what's interesting is they're my age. I'm the age of Governor Herbert's kids, and we're great friends and have a ton in common. And they've had some really amazing experiences, right? And I hope this podcast doesn't come off as negative at all. I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to serve in this position. And my family is really lucky. Like, these are good problems to have,
right.
Like, I feel bad for you. Your dad's the governor, right? No one has sympathy
I don't know. I don't know that people necessarily.
It's like when you owe a lot of tax. It's like, that sucks, you owe a lot of tax, but you made a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
It's okay.
It's okay. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right? There are worse things in the world.
It sucks you're paying a bunch to the government.
Yeah.
But you also brought in a lot. That's why you owe a lot.
That's what I say when I have to pay the credit card fees every month. 3%. I'm like, what? Anyway.
It's because you made so much money
That's
off
right.
of me.
Like, it's a good problem to have.
Eating that Sanpete turkey that you bring in. So yeah, look, I'm not looking for sympathy, but just that's the that's the situation. And,
the real of what it is.
Yeah, and it's getting worse, unfortunately, because anonymous people can attack your kids and your family, and so the good news is people tend to be better here in Utah, and we've got a lot of great support here.
Have you ever been worried for your safety or safety of your family before?
Yeah, I mean, oh, do you want to hear another story?
Yes, we do.
All right, I'll tell you another story. So, one day I was in Vernal at an energy meeting. Beautiful Vernal. I love Vernal. And we were you can't say bad things
Listen,
about
I went to
Vernal.
Lawson, so
Okay. You're good. That's right. Yeah,
rival, so I have to say bad things about Vernal.
That's fine. What year did you graduate?
97.
Okay. So my brother was a quarterback 99 and 2000 for North Sanpete, and we played you guys in the state quarterfinals, I think. But it was a lot of fun.
We're like a big fancy school now.
Yeah, it's an amazing school.
It's like almost 6A, I guess. But
yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. So we I get this call from my wife, and she said, and so I knew something was wrong. She called me a couple times. I ignored it the first time because I was in this meeting. I went out and took it. She's like, "Hey, I got this letter in the mail, and it's a death threat, and there was all kinds of awful stuff in there, like pornographic material and all this other stuff. And when those types of things happen, there are security protocols that we have to implement right away. I don't have security. About half the lieutenant governors in the country do, but we don't here. As the governor says, I'm expendable. So he actually only said that when I asked him if I could do a derby, and it was a lot of fun. So. A demolition derby. We had a good time, and I almost died, but another story. So I immediately call security, and I'm like, hey, so my wife we just got in the mail. We got a death threat and some really vile material, just some terrible stuff. And he's like, okay, we're on it. Tell her we're sending somebody over right now. And like immediately, I called my wife back and said, they're on their way. So we had a trooper who actually lives in Fairview, was the first one there. And he said, and then I got a text saying, hey, we've got a team headed over there. And I'm like, oh, a team. Oh, that's interesting. And then the trooper got there and he's like, hey, where's everybody else? And she's like, well, who else is coming? And he said, well, we've got a hazmat crew on their way. And I'm like, she's like, they said they're sending a hazmat crew. And I'm like, what? And so I texted back our security leader, and I'm like, and then dawned on me, I'm like, hey, when I said vile material, did you think I said a vial of material? Oh. And he thought they had sent like, a substance or something. And fortunately, it was not a vial of material. So, spelling and English matter. But
right.
but so they came and they took care of it. Turned out it was a crazy guy from Arizona, and he'd actually sent them to all elections, like secretaries of state and lieutenant governors across the country. And so
This was to your house?
This was to my house. Yeah.
That's a little scary.
Yeah. And so we have had some things like that. Not too much, but it's a crazy world, and you got to be careful. So.
I remember going, so a good friend of mine was the head of security up there at the Capitol.
Okay.
I want to say like 10 years ago. Chip Blair is his name. He's a state trooper.
I know Chip well. Chip was part of the governor's security detail. Right. Actually, he works for Gail Miller and the Jazz now.
I didn't know
doing
that.
security.
I love Chip. And so I was going to be a cop. That's all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. I was hired with the Border Patrol, and then just last minute, I had this feeling not to do it, and found barbecue like 10 years later. But it was funny. I went up there one day to hang out with him, and I was in his office, and it was in session, and somebody, I don't know if it was right in his office or what, but they were going through voicemails, and every one of them were death threats.
Yeah,
and you could not believe some of the stuff that people were calling. I don't know what line it was. Obviously, calling in, to the Capitol, but I mean, they were saying some gnarly stuff, and I mean, it's got to happen. I think it happened.
And that was
a lot
before
more
social media was a big thing. Yeah,
You can just see some of the stuff that people are saying now.
Oh, and that's true, but it's different. I feel like it's different when somebody makes a phone call, and even worse, send something to your home.
Yeah, and that's where we felt like that we'd been violated.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's a tough one.
Well, and you're kind of down. I mean, there's a couple cops working at a time in the county.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's.
But there's more guns in our house.
I was going to say.
all of Salt Lake
well armed.
PD combined. So we're very well armed at my place, and Abby knows how to. Abby knows how to shoot. So I was, one of my first days as lieutenant governor, a guy, this was on the news, drove his truck like up the stairs at the side of the Capitol, which is right out my office, drove a truck up there, and they stopped him. And immediately I had security all over my office, right? And I'm like, what's going on? I've only been on the job for a couple of weeks. And they said some guy tried to drive his truck up the steps, and I'm like, that's probably one of my cousins. That's kind of how we do stuff
in Ford, it would have made it
in San Pete, but it turned out it wasn't. So we got off the hook there. I want to make sure they didn't get
arrested. To see my cousin Spence. He's in there, right?
Told me to come anytime. So yeah, you can't be too careful. But and I know the governor's had some real threats,
sure.
Some scary stuff.
So what will that look like when you're governor? I don't want to jinx it, but like for your kids, like, will there be a security detail for them, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah,
without giving away anything, of course.
We've still got to work through all of that, and can't talk too much about security. But we do have obviously security for the governor, and we will have to move to the mansion for those purposes. Although we'll be able to spend weekends back in Fairview, like the governor does here in Orem.
Right, I see him at Sleepy Ridge all the time.
Yeah,
bump into him a few times.
He loves that place.
That's his spot. Seems like a pretty good golfer from the looks of it.
He's a great golfer. He's
about a good receiver. I saw. See the
how about that?
The one-handed grab.
Yeah,
dude's 73.
That's crazy.
I mean, he's legit. He's a real athlete. I mean, he was, he was the starting quarterback in high school, starting point guard. I mean, he played everything, but he's probably about a 12 handicap. If he played more, he'd be a 9. Right. If he played regularly.
Next year he'll be a 9. I was
gonna say
next year he will be a 9.
Some improvement next year.
That's true.
Wow. I don't want to hog it. I feel like I'm hogging it.
Go for it. Because I'm going to talk about the Jazz, and once we go down that road, we're not coming back.
I feel like we have to touch on the coronavirus a little bit.
Okay.
And that brings up another point. The Black Lives Matter thing, like, you're starting to see that transition to where you're hearing about it less again. And I think the whole news cycle is a really interesting thing.
Well, I have a theory about that, though. We heard about it a lot more and a lot longer than we would have if it wasn't for the coronavirus. That's my theory. I think it lasted so much longer because basically we don't have any entertainment.
Right. So we had time to focus on it.
There was no jazz game the next day. There was no, there's no sports. There's no new movies coming out. I think it dominated the conversation for a lot longer than people expected. And we actually did see some real change. I mean, we had a special session of the legislature where we made some changes that never would have happened, I think, in another time. So I don't think this is the end of it. I think it will stay top of mind for lots of people for a long time. But you're right. I mean, it's part of the news cycle. But to get 3-4 weeks is almost impossible in our modern world.
What kinds of things from like a government level are you looking at, like from that, like that it allowed you to do? It gave you the time to maybe address some things.
Yeah. So one was, and we reached out to our police community as well. We have a great relationship. We have incredible police departments and officers here in our state. Our troopers are incredible, and we talked to them too. And a lot of these were changes they've been wanting for a long time. So like banning chokeholds, those types of things. Many police departments had already done that. We wanted to do that statewide. There are some things around transparency that we're working on with them. One of the things that I've been very vocal about for a long time is that we're asking our police officers to do things that they aren't trained to do and shouldn't have to do. I mean, half of the use of force shootings that we have in our state involve serious mental illness. And every time somebody has some sort of a mental breakdown, we call 911 and we send a cop out, right? That should not happen. We should actually not be defunding them. We should be giving them more funding.
Amen.
And funding for de-escalation training and funding with on this side for our mobile crisis outreach teams to actually get psychologists out there to help with with people that are having those breaks.
Awesome documentary about that. The name escapes me, but it was I think it was San Antonio Police Department that they have 2 officers. That's it. I mean, it's a huge city.
Yeah,
but they are. When a 911 call comes in for somebody like that, they're the first call to go out, and
amazing.
These guys are trained and doing that. And that's the thing, people forget how many hats we ask police officers. I mean, they're marriage counselors.
Yeah.
They're parents. The
domestic violence stuff. I mean, it's crazy what we're asking them to do.
Yep.
And they should not be doing that.
Nope.
One of the interesting things during Operation Rio Grande, when we were working with the homelessness situation and the drug culture down there, we were sending out social workers with our troopers as they would go out and deal with these situations. And
very cool.
It worked so much better. So those are some of the things that we're doing, but this has to expand beyond that, right? And we have elevated our multicultural office now to being an advisor, a direct advisor to the governor, so that they're on all of our cabinet meetings. I mean, everything that we do, so they can help us see things through with their eyes. I will never know what it's like to be Black in Utah.
Exactly right.
I just won't. But I can get close to people who do, and I can listen to people who are. And we need more of that. And so that's what we're trying to do. And if I'm fortunate enough to win in November, our administration will have a lot more of that.
So
that's really cool.
I think ultimately I still think that ultimately in Utah, we don't, there's not a lot of true racist people. I think they're just uneducated and they don't know how to be around Black people, because there's a lot of people here that have never grown up around, different cultures and different races.
Yeah.
And so I think everything to them, especially through the lens of opinion shows and, Fox News, CNN, and social media, even worse, is kind of an us against them.
Well, and
point of view.
Nobody likes to be attacked, right?
For sure.
So when you don't think you're racist or you don't intentionally do things, and you hear, we're all racist, you push back on that. And that's I think what we're seeing, when instead of pushing back, if we would sit down and listen, I've learned some things that I've done or said that I had no idea were impacting people. And then just seeing the institutional piece. Look, it wasn't it wasn't until the 60s that we really, and 70s, that we got rid of a lot of this real intentional racism built into our legal system. We can't expect all of every vestige of that to be gone in 50 years.
Sure.
The way we fund education is a perfect example of this. Look, if you live in a nice neighborhood and property taxes fund a big piece of education, like, you're going to have nicer schools and you're going to have better. So we always say, you know, the U.S. is about opportunity. We give everyone an opportunity to get ahead, but that's not necessarily true.
Not at all. It's not an equal opportunity. I mean, like you said, I've said this a few times, like, if I'm born in Southside Chicago or Provo, Utah, it's going to be way different.
It's going to be different. Now, the good news in Utah is we lead the nation in upward mobility. So you can be born in poverty and not stay in poverty. Number one,
wow,
Harvard.
That's an actual
Harvard,
quantifiable number.
It is.
How do they measure that?
So Harvard did a bunch of studies on it. It's been a couple of years since I've looked at it. I'd have to go back and see exactly how they measure, but they do. They look through and they look at your socioeconomic status when you were born, you know, what your family was like, where you lived, all of those things, and then they follow you throughout your life. And you know, it's the American dream, right? It's, in fact, the New Yorker did an article a few years ago that said the American dream is dead, except in Utah, and it was
wow.
It was about that, and so we do a better job of that. But again, if you're born in Rose Park or, you know, West Valley,
Sure.
The odds are just different. They just are. And part of that is our education system. And so making sure that we get educational opportunities in those areas. Rural Utah, same thing. Like,
Absolutely.
you know, I'm very fortunate to have lived the life and had the opportunities that I've had, because so many don't.
Right.
Not many end up on the East Coast at law school, I'll bet.
That's right. Yeah, it's very, very rare.
Yeah.
And
Well, to have a farmer dad, right?
yeah.
I don't mean that to sound negative, but to take you to Washington, D.C. when you're 8 years old and get that culture, I mean, that's awesome. That's a really cool thing to have that kind of, because those opportunities or those experiences really do shape who we are. And we forget that even at 8 years old,
Huge
you
impact.
could be totally steering, you know, your kid's life into a direction and help them find their thing. And so it is important for us to get out there and experience that stuff. But I mean, yeah, there's some places you don't get that opportunity.
Yeah. So I think that's where we have to be intentional about it. We just have to say, look, we're going to try to solve these problems, even though we don't think we're part of the problem. Let's try to be part of the solution and figure it out together.
Yeah.
Wow.
How hard is it when you want to just have like open conversations about things, but you know that someone is always going to take what you say and twist it? Like, is that do you have to keep that front of mind?
You mean like this podcast being the reason I don't get elected in November? It's definitely in play. Right now I'm thinking of the 20 things I've said that are going to get me in trouble. Yeah.
Whatever.
It's real though.
It's
real.
It's got to be so stressful.
So there's a couple things that I think are important. One is, and this is where we need to change, and part of it is politicians' fault. I'm not apologizing for politicians. We've had too many politicians that are talking point politicians. They only tell you what you want to hear. They only say what they need to get elected. They're scripted. They never answer the question you ask. They just do their thing.
Like athletes.
There's some of that, right? I think if you're real with people, you do get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Now that changes the higher up the ladder you get, and I'm sure
which is so sad because it should be the opposite.
It should be the opposite. Being lieutenant governor, I'm sure I got to pass on a lot of things that I won't as governor. Everything gets put under a microscope. Everything gets taken out of context, and people will do with it what they will. I will say on social media though, because on Twitter, especially because I've spent time interacting with people and I try to be me. My hope is if you only know me through Twitter and then you meet me in real life, that I'm the same person.
Yeah.
And the fact that they know it's really me and it's not somebody managing my account, it's not, some staffer, it changes it a little bit. And I think I get the benefit of the doubt when I make some mistakes or, say something wrong. And then just apologize when you're wrong. Now, if people have a vendetta or they're out to get you, they'll never let that go. But it is hard. It's more intense during a campaign because I had 3 guys who were, and they had teams of people who were watching my every move and everything that could be taken out of context and put on a billboard or blown up and sent in a mailer to people. And that was always really hard. So I'm probably a little looser right now than I should be. and I don't drink. So this is
when did like campaigning become that? Like when did campaigning turn so negative?
It's probably, well, I always have to go back. If you go back and look at like campaigning during the founding of our nation, it was brutal. I mean, there was some awful stuff that happened. We talk about fake news now. Thomas Jefferson basically owned a newspaper through a shadow organization and published terrible things about his competitors all the time.
Right.
So that was really awful stuff. And there have been awful campaigns throughout history. It's the nature of human beings. But I really think that in the 90s, in fact, so this polarization, if you go back, the political scientists can measure this. If you look at the 435 members of the House of Representatives in Congress, and you kind of figure out in the middle, like the center where stuff gets done, they will tell you that in the 70s, there were about 350 or 325 in the middle. In the 80s, it dropped to about 275. In the 90s is where you see a really big drop down into the hundreds. And that was, partially my party's fault. Newt Gingrich and some of the stuff that happened there, the contract with America, things they figured out how to use divisiveness in a way, and then the Democrats jumped right on, and in the 2000s it dropped into single digits, and then like a couple years ago, the last I looked, the middle was like 8.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's it. Just so polarized, and then we carve up, we redistrict, in Congress, but governor's races are polarized and there's no redistricting there. But what it's become is people get more apathetic and don't participate. You only need your base to, and what stokes the base, the more extremes of the party, is the fear and painting the other side as evil. And so you've got to support me to stop evil. And then we reward that. People get elected. And then, so sorry, I just keep talking.
What's rewarded is repeated, right?
That's right. The other thing is, one of the biggest problems we have, and this made sense a couple hundred years ago, but having Congress run every 2 years is really a problem because they are constantly campaigning. Yep. And there is no incentive to actually get anything done. At least in the Senate, every 6 years, they have 4 years where they don't have to think about campaigning constantly. So you get a little more statesmanship, but it's rough. It's just really rough.
Sure. 2 years. I mean, that gives you about 10 months, 6 to 10 months to actually just work.
But they're campaigning the second it's over. That's the issue.
And that's the thing. It's a constant campaign. They have to raise money for the next campaign, which is another problem. And that cycle just perpetuates itself.
Do you think an independent legitimately could ever win?
At what level?
The president.
I don't. No,
he wanted
really
Madam
don't.
Secretary. Just so you know,
there's so many good TV presidents.
I missed that episode. Come to think of it, I missed all of the episodes. I really don't. I don't think. I just don't see it happening. It's
you gotta have the money. You gotta have the backing. You've got.
What's interesting is I think as a nation we're actually more fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Yep. I think that's kind of where the nation's.
I use that to describe myself all the time.
Right? No, I
really do.
I hear that from people all the time, but there's not a party for that, right?
No,
if you want fiscal conservative, I guess the Republicans, although we haven't been that way for a while.
My cousin calls them gun-toting Democrats. That's what he calls himself. I'm a gun-toting Democrat.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So. I mean, he's a liberal, but he's a Democrat, but there's a lot of things that he believes in the Second Amendment and all. Yeah. So gun-toting Democrat, that's what he
and there's no party for that person, whoever that is. So, yeah.
And that's where we really should all be, right? I mean, nothing gets done. I mean, it only gets done when you have the majority.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, and that's just sad. We should be able to do more bipartisan things.
Well, because it's awesome to have people voting for both sides all the time. Depending on what the issue is and what they actually genuinely believe is better.
And being able to believe in a candidate, no matter what. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if I'm on this team, I have to vote for this team.
Yeah.
And man, it's a problem.
Well, and even when they agree on something, they don't want to give the other side the benefit of accomplishment. And so we become the parties of no. Like, as long as we stopping the other side is a win instead of actually doing something.
Well, and what's so hard is like, you can look, because there's, for example, Utah done a fantastic job with so many things with Corona and the economy. Jobs have come back, all these things. There's numbers and data that prove it. But if you ask a Democrat, everything is failing.
What a great segue into my next question.
Or a Republican running against me.
Exactly.
or that.
Well, and that my real theory is that so much of what we're seeing in the media with coronavirus is because it's an election year. Like, I really, truly believe that.
So I will say this, and we've probably lost all your listeners at this point.
I doubt. No, you're wrong. I think this is going to be a good one.
I will say this. One of my laments is, most states don't have statewide elections on the same on the presidential year cycle. So, for example, Idaho has theirs in 2018. That's when they had their governor's race and 22. So we're one of the few states that is on the same cycle as the presidential election. And I can tell you how different this whole coronavirus thing would be in Utah if we weren't in cycle right now. I really wish we weren't. I talked to my friends in other states who aren't in cycle, and yes, there are arguments and disputes and back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, but it's not got nearly the attention that it is here. I mean, it was amazing to me, the national articles that were written on things we did here in Utah when there were 20 other states that made far worse mistakes than we did. And again, that we weren't perfect, and we need to be able to stand up to scrutiny. But having an election at the national level 100% has made this worse. No question. It's made it worse the way President Trump has responded, and it's made it worse the way the media has criticized him, and Democrats have criticized him, and then he responds back in a way that makes it worse, and then they respond, and it's just
like the self-fulfilling negative loop.
It is. It's just awful. If this had happened, a year or two ago, it would have been very different, unfortunately. But yeah, everything's politicized.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the sad part. I think, like the mask, we had a great discussion about masks after a podcast, a week ago?
Yeah.
We should have recorded it and made it a podcast. But, Brent feels very strongly about masks. My argument was, if you mandate masks, less people will wear them, because I feel like in Utah, there's a lot of type A personalities here, right? I mean, I'm sure they're everywhere, but we have a very intelligent state. I feel like overall there's a lot of smart people here. And I feel like when you make things, not reading that it was a mandate today, I think is a good move, because I feel like when you tell somebody that is a freedom-loving, hardcore Republican, right? Everyone's freedom-loving, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
The America kind of people. America.
America.
You can't tell me what to do. That's my freedom.
America.
And so I feel like today kind of came from the heart from him, and I liked that. And then I read that article that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Because I've kind of been like, man, I've had a hard time seeing how masks help anywhere besides maybe Costco, right? Or anywhere where there's a large amount of people. But then to see how politicized they've become and how divisive, yet another thing to divide us.
Yeah.
Who would think a fabric mask would become a political statement?
It's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's
But
crazy.
see, now I feel like I want to wear one because I want to be in the middle.
Good.
You know what I mean? Like, now I'm starting to feel like I want to shut my party up, right? Like, dude, you guys got to chill out. Okay. It's just a mask. But I also want to show some empathy to the other side. And I just want to say that, or show that there's some, but I mean, do you guys factor that stuff in?
Sure we do.
I mean, the mandate.
We absolutely do.
I mean,
it's excruciating. Like, again, you can't win on this issue.
For sure.
And I
loved your tweet storm, like whatever, like the 17 tweets, and it's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Talking about
some people
all
didn't
of the
think it was
different.
awesome.
Of course, no one's ever going to.
Everyone's angry on Twitter.
Thanks, Andrew. No, we do factor that in. And look, I there are a certain group of people that even if you mandate it, they're not going to wear it. I understand that, and you're right about that kind of freedom-loving pushback. There was a great cartoon I saw once that there was a sign that said like "No juggling knives," and the guy's walking by and he's like, suddenly I have an urge to juggle knives. You know?
See, and I feel like there's a lot of that type of person here.
You're wired that way. I will tell you,
I mean, America's wired that. That's how we were founded, right? Like, we can do it better. You suck. Like, we're not paying tax. Like, we'll do it our own. We'll do it on our own.
We're going to throw that tea in the ocean just because. So yeah, we do take that into account. We have seen evidence that a mandate does get more people to wear masks than not, and so that's a hard one. I just drove through Oregon with my family a couple days ago, and they have a mandate, and everywhere we went, every gas station, I'd say 90% of people were wearing masks, maybe a little more than that, and. We had a guy in our office who tested positive for the coronavirus in the governor's office, and he was really good at wearing a mask. Anytime we were, in a conference room, the governor was there, he had a mask on. 20 people, he was exposed to 20 people, but he had a mask on every time. Not one of them got it, and so we feel pretty good about that it does actually help cut down on the transmission rate. I always tell people to find someone that they can trust, and I always recommend Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He is former FDA commissioner. He works for the American Enterprise Institute, which is a right-leaning, a conservative-leaning think tank. He's brilliant. He's really good on this stuff. And he showed some studies that if we could just get 60% of people to wear masks, we could get the transmission rate under 1. And so we know we're not going to get everybody. And I do think that pleas from people, like you, like a very conservative Senator Dan McKay, like the governor, if we can get all these voices, I think that we're going to have some of our college, football people and others saying, hey, if you want games back, wear a mask.
If that doesn't motivate you, what will?
Exactly.
That's what I said. I was like, do you want football or a mask?
You said that. I'm like, I'll wear a mask.
That's how I feel. Yeah, anything to get football back. So yeah.
Well, and it's a hard thing because, you don't know what to believe. There's so much stuff out there. I'll ask one more question. My neighbor is a salesman for a company that has a test. And according to him, the best test out there is only 60% accurate. My grandma had to be tested 3 times and she was positive, no symptoms. And then 2 days later, negative. And then just to make sure, 2 days after that, negative. So it was negative. So how much of that is happening?
So... And again, I am not an expert,
Sure.
And the problem with this is that suddenly there are a lot of experts, and usually they're selling
What's that,
something.
Canon or Quanon, whatever everyone's into now? How do you say that? We don't even want to mention it. We won't give them any press. But
but what I've been told is that most tests are north of 95% accurate.
Really?
There are some false positives out there. That does happen. It absolutely does. I mean, that's, if say a test is 96% accurate and, you're doing, we've had some days where we did 10,000 tests a day.
Right.
That's still a lot of people that are going to get a false positive,
right.
and some false negatives in
That's a good point.
there as well. So, it wouldn't surprise me that your grandma maybe got a false positive.
Right.
And so we do believe. Now, was this the actual swab, or was this an antibody test?
This was the
swab. Yeah. So those do have a higher accuracy rate. The antibody test is where it's a real struggle right now. I'm trying to figure out if you've had the disease before using a blood test. I actually had a 2 finger prick test. I was told that it was 98% accurate, and I tested positive for the antibodies, saying that I had it early on. But it didn't make sense. So I went and got a blood draw from the University of Utah. Their test is, I'm told, is much more accurate. And they did not find any antibodies. And so, I don't believe I've had it. So we're still really cautious on those. But I can't remember. I've talked so much today, but I actually met with one of the drug manufacturers today. I don't think we've had this conversation, they're making a vaccine. They're one of the vaccine makers. They've started production on this vaccine already. And by production, I mean, it's still in the testing phase,
Sure.
but they built a facility here in the United States. It would normally take a year. They did it in 30 days. They are in full production right now. They're making the vaccine as we speak. They will have 100 million doses of this vaccine by October. And assuming that it goes through the clinical trials and passes, we could have 100 million doses in October. That's enough to vaccinate, everybody over the age of 65 and people who are at risk. That's a game changer
For sure.
in October.
Why
And
can't that information get out there?
I don't know
And
why
like,
it's
why
not out
is it
there.
that
Because
it
it'll
gets
help
out-
Donald Trump get elected.
But
I'm
for real,
serious.
I know it gets hidden. Like real, true data gets hidden, right?
And positives.
The positive stuff, yeah.
It's like all they want to talk about is the number of cases, and they don't talk about what's our hospitalization rate, what's our death rate,
which is what we pay close attention
which is
to.
why you haven't done stricter mandates, because it hasn't. Like the
Right.
number of cases. This is me talking. I'll make sure I preface that.
Well, if you're on social media, you're an expert, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The number of cases I feel like don't matter. What matters is who's going to the hospital and who's dying, right? Like,
So you're right. The number, I wouldn't say they don't matter, but they matter less
Yeah.
than the hospitalizations. The problem is the lag time that we have, and because we're testing more, we are getting we are finding out people earlier, and so it can take 3 weeks before they get hospitalized, 2 to 3 weeks before they get hospitalized.
Okay.
So and it can take 2 weeks before you even show symptoms. So you could be a month plus in this. So the problem is a decision we made a month ago. We're just now seeing the results of.
Yeah.
And if you make the wrong decision, it takes too long to switch, which is where New York found themselves, right, in such a bad way. And so, but you're right. We are watching the ICU beds and the hospitalization rates very, very closely. And what we do know is that the more cases you have, the more hospitalizations you are going to have. The question is just how many. If it's younger people, you're going to have less, right? Which we're seeing so far, which is good news. But there is a threshold where it gets unsustainable, and we don't want to have to shut things back down. And that's why, again, please just wear masks.
Yeah.
That's it.
Don't make us make you, just do it.
so
That's-
like, why is that number like, is it out there for people to know like what the hospitalization or ICU beds, like, is that
Yeah.
something they don't want published?
No, we show that now. If you go to coronavirus.utah.gov, there's a whole bunch of data on there. You can see the hospitalizations. Hospitalizations have been climbing. The good news today is we had a lot of people that left the hospital, and we had fewer people come in. So that's good. We actually we were getting up to about 190 beds, close to 200. We fell back today to, I think, 177, something like that.
Are they
So-
only when you're saying hospitalization? Because I've heard a few people say, well, there's like, for instance, my daughter just broke her collarbone a couple weeks ago, and they're seeing a huge spike because now hospitals are opening back up to elective surgeries.
right.
So they're seeing a big jump. And I remember the surgeon saying, we haven't been this slammed in a long time. I mean, every OR was
Yeah, because they had a
packed.
backlog.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why the lines of getting tested for COVID are so high, because people have to get tested to get their stuff done and get in there. So are those numbers just COVID-19 patients?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 177 to 190, wherever we are today, those are just COVID patients. And what we do on the ICUs is we look at the ICU corona patients and the total ICU capacity.
Right.
And so, because there are lots of people, so I think the coronavirus ICU is about 30%, but overall we're at about 60 to, actually it's less than that. I'm sorry. It may be closer to 20%. But overall capacity is between 60 and 70% from all the other things.
Right.
And so we're watching that. Once we get up to 80 or 90% total, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And we're looking to overwhelm the system.
See, and I wish that was the kind of information that was the top of the news headline.
Yeah.
Right.
Like instead of just, I don't know. That's just
Right.
me. That's just my opinion.
No,
on
and
that
I think
stuff.
that's smart. I remember reading, I want to say it was you that said this. Something like, you were kind of explaining the whole flatten the curve thing. It's not like we're trying to get rid of it. We're just trying to make it so not too many people flood the hospitals at the same time.
That's right.
We want kind of a down curve, obviously, but if we have a massive spike statewide all at once, it'll just screw up the hospitals, the hospital beds.
That's where you see the high death rates. So we have one of the lowest mortality rates in the country, which is really, really good because if you do get sick and you do go to the hospital, we've got great health care. But as those numbers start to come up, and what's interesting is we talk a lot about overwhelming the system with the number of beds. There's actually a more challenging piece, and it's not having enough doctors, specialists for what they're doing. So right now, with those 170 to 190, you're getting the best doctors who deal with this stuff all the time. Once we get up much above 200, now you're getting somebody who doesn't do this because there aren't enough to go around, and you're getting nurses, and then
the graveyard nurse at the urgent care.
Yeah, the quality of care goes down,
right.
and your mortality rates start to go up.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue that the hospitals.
See,
worry
that's
about.
interesting info. We want to keep the A team. We don't want to exceed what the A team can handle.
Because if grandma gets the B team, she might not be coming home.
Right.
So
wow. So wear masks.
That's it.
I've really changed.
I love that you've
with
changed.
that. I really and I don't think I was ever hardcore. When we had our little discussion in here that was fun, I was mostly talking more about it being mandated. How I felt like if you mandate something, it's going to push a large segment of Utah into the don't tell me what to do.
And you're right.
Right?
You're absolutely right.
And so I feel like once you mandate something, it becomes even more polarizing. And so I kind of liked the heart. I know my wife was a little bothered by the school thing only because she's like, I can't even keep clothes on my kids. Like, how the freak am I going to keep a mask on my 6-year-old? But I know there's some flexibility with the younger kids, but it felt more of kind of a genuine plea. Like, we love you guys. We're all in this together. Just wear a mask. And then that information, I almost wish more of that. I hope a lot of people read that article that you mentioned because it does talk about, what was it? There's like a 70% chance of somebody spreading it without a mask, but it drops by 40% if one of the two people that are next to each other, if one of them has coronavirus and one was wearing a mask, it drops by 40%. Now, if they're both wearing a mask, it's only a 1% chance
It goes way down.
that it's going to
Crazy.
travel.
Yeah.
And so that's
I hear all this. Wait a minute, the virus is so small. Of course, it's going through masks. I'm like, yes, but what you don't realize is that the virus is carried on the droplets that come out of our mouth, and the droplets that you can't even see, right? And so the mask keeps those droplets from going through, and that's it. It's about viral load, how much of the virus is out there, the risk in a small space, small confined space with no distance between people, those types of things. Being outside is always better than being inside. Those are the things that really matter.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. Shut up, Brent. It's all, yeah, you're right. It's all about
That's what I
learning
said.
and growing. It's all about learning and growing, okay? Learning and growing. So, well, I appreciate, I'm sure you're so sick of talking about.
No, it's
and,
okay.
it says a lot about you to have to do the campaigning that you did. And you're the head of all this stuff in the state of Utah. I mean, it falls on you, right? I mean, you're.
Yeah, I mean, people say that, and it sounds great or awful, but it's.
It does sound awful. You're right.
But really, our job was just to get information to the governor and the legislative leadership, and they're the ones that actually make the decisions. So, again, to Governor Herbert, to his credit, he's trying to navigate this. There's no, we didn't get like, hey, in a pandemic, this is how you handle it. 1918 was the last time we've gone through this, and
Spanish flu.
It's so.
I don't think we want to follow any of those guys.
We don't. It was rough. It was really rough.
Absolutely
so
don't.
We're proud of the people of the state of Utah. We are concerned about the growth that we're seeing right now, as the governor said in his heartfelt plea today. So
right. Well, it's good to know. Plus, it's the perfect time to battle it and get it knocked down because it's summer.
Yep.
We got a lot of sunlight, long days full of light. It's like if we all just put the masks on, then football won't be ruined. I don't give a crap about baseball. Just football.
Safe football.
Okay.
Can we like make a negotiation like cancel baseball? That's like wearing a mask, right?
Yeah.
We'll cancel baseball to get
anyway.
football.
Done.
I'd make that trade.
Let's take their salaries.
Make that trade.
Put it. No, just.
We know what matters.
Well, man, we really appreciate you.
Thank you so
by.
much.
I mean, it's so cool to kind of get to know the person. And I mean, that story about you being a little kid and kind of where that all kind of started.
Yeah, I haven't shared that much.
Like
but,
that is a really
That's
cool
really
story.
cool.
And we would love to have you back because I know there's
well, we got to
a
talk jazz
ton
sometime.
Yes.
of other
So,
stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we got to get Abby in here too.
Yeah.
The first lady,
Mostly
almost
just
first lady.
Yeah, get Abby. Your listeners will appreciate her a lot more
That'd be
than me.
so fun. Well, I just want to know who your marriage counselor is. Because, I mean, owning a business is one thing, but owning a business, being a city councilman, a county commissioner, a state legislator, lieutenant governor.
I will say,
Holy crap.
the-
And you went through law school together, right?
yeah, the hardest time was when I was the mayor. That was when our daughter was born, and I was the bishop as well.
Wow.
But I only tell you this because this was the best part.
my God.
So I would have to turn off somebody's water because they didn't pay their bills. And
And then interview him.
well, no, then I would go write out a check to turn their water back
then
on.
they came and asked for money.
and,
Oh, my
we just
gosh.
take care of it and go through. So those, she would probably tell you those were the worst times, but we'll have to have her on to see. But the last 4 months have been as challenging as anything because a campaign is a lot, and it's a big deal. And again, we knew what we were getting into, but we didn't know we were getting into a pandemic, and
For sure.
and trying to figure that out. And like I said, I like to solve problems, but there were times in this where there was no solution. You couldn't see a way through it. You were either killing people or destroying the economy, and no one should ever have to make that choice. And again, Utahns stepped up in such a big way. I just have to give a shout out to the great people of this state. They're going to figure out the mask thing. We're going to figure it out.
I think you're right.
We figured out how to not have a stay-at-home order. One of only 7 states that didn't have one. We made it through that piece. Utahns pull together when the chips are down. We figured out. We love each other. We care about each other. That's why I feel so fortunate to be the lieutenant governor and to be running for governor, because people are awesome and I love this place, and I know you do too. So
What a great way to end this episode. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
That was awesome.
Thanks, guys.